Hey guys, welcome back to the Homework Assignment Podcast. I'm your host, RJ Patino. Today we have a great show for you. We have JT here with Combat Capital, correct? And he has some great information from us, great insight. If you guys are like me, owning a business or small business, even a startup, it's really hard to learn the ins and out of the economy, the government, when it's comes to trying to get capital to start your business, if you're a startup, or even capital to expand. And JT has some great insights here, and we're really excited to dig in, man. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Also, JT served in the Army for 6 years, correct?
Yes.
So we want to thank you for your service. That's phenomenal.
Appreciate it.
We could talk in, your thoughts of the way the world is right now, but that'll be a very long show.
Yeah, right.
All the politics and everything. So, JT, tell us a little bit about Combat Capital and your story behind that.
Yeah, sure. Combat Capital is really another one of my mistakes and failures that just happened to come through. Funny story is one of my best friends from high school, he had been working in the community doing consulting services for small businesses in the Hispanic market, which is a huge market here across the country, as you all know. So I always thought, well, that's awesome. He knows that information. He's been going to classes. The last 10 years that I've been, working with flippers and contractors, he's been doing that. And COVID happened, and, we were hitting 10 states buying houses with the team. And my hard money and my partner, who pretty much taught me everything, they went to the Bahamas, and they were going to wait out COVID.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys taught me, like, when there's blood in the water, that's when you go. Yeah, like, we could have made $100 million that year and buying properties that people didn't want, like people that are in scarcity, fear-city mode, just like people do with businesses, Warren Buffett,
Yep.
So when that happened, I tried to keep things afloat for probably about another 4 months, and I realized we weren't buying anymore and we weren't moving anymore. We're just offloading stuff. And like other jobs I'd seen before, I was just like, well, man, things are getting risky. Now, rewind about a year before that, my buddy's been trying to push me to use my platform more for the local community. And he's like, hey, man, I'm building this lending company. You know this stuff. I'm like, lending? He's like, bro, you have a degree. You just got your degree in finance and business science. Like, yeah. I was like, yeah, but I know like unconventional. I know real estate investing style type lending. I know mortgages. I know stuff like that. I don't know business loans and things like that. My credit's crap right now. I'm just making good money. And he's like, no, you know way more than you think you do. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. Nobody's really doing anything during COVID.
Right.
I saw there's a huge need for this. And the only people, this is like the last year of COVID, 2021, that the last little bit of the lockdown, people were still trying to survive and get their businesses going. And me being an entrepreneur at that time, I really respected that. And I was like, well, let me see what this is about. I'll listen from you. I'll do whatever you say. And let me learn the game that way, because if I could be of service, that's all I've ever really wanted.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how I got in, man. A bunch of no's until I ran out of no's for my best friend. And then, fast forward 3.5 years later, and, I own my own private brokerage for that and been able to be a resource to the community, not just here, but all over.
So, Combat Capital, what inspired the name?
Combat Capital, I had a whole bunch of hardcore names. Like, I'm ex-Army infantry. Like, I'm boots on the ground. Like, I don't know. I didn't have even with like a little bit of marketing background and everything, like I came up with stuff that was way too hard because I didn't want it to sound like finance, but I wanted to relate my veteran community as well.
Of course.
It was hard for me. So my buddy told me to come up with a list. He's like, give me 20 names. So I came up with 20 names, mess around with fonts. Remember, this is during lockdown, so we had more time than normal.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at other companies, and I was like, well, I don't want that to influence me. So really, I got a list knocked down to 4 names, and I just put it out on social media and let the people pick for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And it worked out. Like, I got so much reaction, so much love, and people were like, I don't even know what this is, but, if you're doing I can help you. I was like, man, where were you at a year ago? But it was great, man, to get that feedback, and I knew... I'm a very faith-based person, also spiritual person. Like, I definitely lean on my intuition as I get older. And there's just a feeling when you know that you're right. It's a little bit of nervousness, but it's a little bit of hunger. Like, when you get that feeling, that's the time to act. So I pulled the trigger on that. I knew how to put everything up, got my LLC, and then started, doing the grind of, running another business.
That's phenomenal. So... what is your vision behind the company? Like what is your target?
Okay. My vision really and my target market is really small business owners that are looking to scale and grow and who are in need of resources and or capital. Like that's what we do. My vision is that there's enough information out there that my platform can be accurate, current, and quick acting so that we aren't the ones that are slowing up access to capital, knowledge, or networking, for a business.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned when we were talking about the names, you're like, I didn't want to name it finance. And I think that throws a lot of people off, especially online, right? If I'm seeing if I'm getting capital for my company, all of a sudden I'm seeing finance companies across the board and it's not attractive, right? It's almost like it's these New York brokers trying to get to you. And in my experience, it goes hand in hand what you're saying is like nobody has the information. I feel like our business is pretty good and it's been going strong. It's been growing, but I still don't have enough information. And like I'm not scared to go get capital, but I hold myself back because of that lack of information, right? And so, you're talking about being able to provide that. Like, we were talking just a minute ago. And this will give you guys a little background on me, but I have the same name as my father. And so my father used my name for like phone carriers and, on a mortgage and stuff like that, because his credit was jacked up. And so in turn, he jacked up my credit. So I had a rough start to building my company and I didn't have somebody like you to be able to kind of guide me. So how would you guide someone to get the information that you can provide people?
Don't do it how I did it. I did YouTube University to jump in, just so I could argue with what I was doing already and taking night classes at the same time, trying to learn this finance stuff. And I'm arguing about like real market things with people in class because they're going to be the ones that are in those broker positions or working with those equity firms and things like that, money managers. The real way and the faster way that I did it with my company the last 3.5 years was going out and networking and asking for what I want, being specific and clear on what I want. The hardest thing is to be unclear, right? You don't know what you don't know. That causes confusion. Confusion leads to fear. And what's fear? False evidence that appears real, right? Yeah. But it's one of the biggest barriers to everything. And we learn from our parents. These things, not right, wrong, or different, but you as a minority, me as a minority, you don't even have to be a minority. If you're not coming from a place of wealth and understanding how money works, you're not getting these things.
Yep.
So you need to go out to your local chambers. You need to talk to your local nonprofits. Like the real way that money funnels from the government to a small business is very, very simple. Somebody requests a grant or they make a grant, they see a need. The government's usually behind, right? So there's a need in a specific market. They develop a grant or somebody else does it and pitches it to them. Now they go and say, all right, we're going to open this up and receive the money. Now it goes down to the state level and or the municipality level, like your local level, right? So that's why grants are always changing or some are always updating. But another way is there's rich people that die off that have trust. And what do they want to do? I don't want to give it, it's too much money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me give it out to the world for a good cause, right? So now you have a lot of trusts that make grants. There's lots of resources and money. It's just understanding the flow of it, right?
That's interesting.
It's like Monopoly, man.
Yeah. That's crazy.
You got to know the rules, right?
It's funny you bring this up, and this just kind of goes along with the story, but a little while ago I was reading that the owner of Hobby Lobby decided not to give his fortune to his family or his kids. And I always wondered what happens with that money. There you go.
Yeah.
Right? It probably gets donated or whatever.
Yeah, they'll break it up however they want, and we can do the same thing. You can also make your own bank. There's so many financial tools that are out there that people are more than happy, especially we're very fortunate here in Arizona that we have the tools that we have. It wasn't always like that. The last 5 to 10 years, I've seen a change the last 5 years because that's when I've been paying attention to it. But the last 10 years, how much money Arizona has dumped back into its local economy shows why we're still at the forefront, right? It's really us, Texas, Nevada, Florida, like those are the ones. North Carolina's coming up, but we're like the cusp. We got new business moving here still.
Yeah,
in a downturn,
it's growing.
Yeah, just like the last downturn.
Yeah.
So
it's phenomenal.
There's always growth.
if you guys see me going, it's because I'm learning a lot right now. And, before we were talking before and I was just digging into, your mind. I'm just like, man, like I wish I knew you before I started my company because I feel like I would be 10 times bigger than I am now. And this may be a question more for me than the audience, but what is your ideal client?
My ideal client is somebody willing to do the work and who's already done some basic information. I don't care if it's the wrong information. They already have that tool going in their head because I don't have an unnecessary, huge client book. My goal is to whittle down my clients to 30 clients, and that's all I'm working with for this specific business. So I can still do more philanthropy and nonprofit work where really my passion stuff is. So it's really, have you done your taxes? What's your time in business? What type of lending do you do, or have you had credit-wise or loan-wise that's in your name personally? Yeah. All of these things can affect the type of money, the options that you have, your personal credit score. Like until you build out a business profile, like that's why they want you to sign a PG or a personal guarantee. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that doesn't help you because that's not using your EIN, that's using your social security number. Mm-hmm. So anything goes wrong, what happens? It hits you personally. You should really get off of using anything. I mean, there's different tactics and things for different needs, but when you have a business, you should be maximizing your business capital. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and we were talking a little bit before the show, a lot of businesses like me, it's like, hey, I've always heard that it takes money to make money. And I do believe that's true to a certain point. I think you can also make money without money, but once you want to scale, when it comes to scaling, you do need funds, or you're going to end up using the capital that you've worked hard for, and you're going to be risking that to build your company, like you said earlier.
100%.
And I think that's where a lot of I have a lot of friends who own businesses, and I've watched their downfall due to not being able to get capital for expansion, or they grew too big and then they didn't have enough cash flow. Me, for example, construction cash flow is king, which 100%. I think it is for every single business. And it's really hard to control that cash flow. It's like there's, people go out there and sell their souls for a little bit of capital because they don't know where to go. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've been there. I'm guilty of it.
We all
and but no, this information is just miraculous in my opinion. You mentioned a nonprofit. You want to touch base, elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. The nonprofit that I work with is called Bunker Labs. It's for veteran business owners. Basically, I'm an ambassador for that, so I'm a caretaker of whatever. I'm local city of Phoenix, right? So you'll usually have one or two, and I think we have. Depends on the state, but we have at least one on almost every state. Some of the smaller states are combined, so it's a national program.
That's amazing,
and it's been around for a while. I really wanted to do it before I got in and before I got out of the military, but. It had closed down in our area. I think the guy who opened it up here went to go open up Seattle, which gave us an opportunity to jump in and reopen it. So I got to do that with a buddy of mine, Fernando, who was ex-Marine, ex-Army recruiter, and then Sam, who was in, I believe she was in logistics, and she retired helping out Luke Air Force Base doing general, contracts, government contracts for that. So, and we were people, right? We are just like, hey, people need to get this information. Here's a nonprofit that's already doing this. We, talk to them. How do we get started? What do you guys need from us? And nonprofits, for the most part, if they've been established more than a year, they have a focus and a drive and a cohort classes that they want. Yeah. So the one that I'm in charge of is called the VIR program. And then there's another one called the CEO Circle. And the CEO Circle is if you have over 100 employees, I think it's if you're making over $1 million gross a year. Those numbers might have changed. I mean, they're always subject to change. But with the VIR program, it's every 6 months we have a new cohort. So I get about 8 to 15 people who are business owners, specialists in their field that want to expand their market, that want to grow their business, or they're ready to exit and they don't know how. They don't know business brokers, analysts, things like that you should do. They don't know what the going rate is for their business. So by learning from them, it helps me teach every other student, what I know. It's funny, I'm the money guy, but really it's like I learn just as much from them as they learn from me.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like you have a lot of experience in helping businesses expand, which is kind of the niche, right?
Yeah.
What is one mistake you see business owners make on their way through expansion?
Not having a realistic plan for not what if, but when.
Okay.
Or putting the blinders on. Like we've all gotten, you started a business, you worked in a business, you watched it grow. When you're in grind mode and you're dealing with leads, you might be doing your marketing.
Some goggles on.
Yeah, exactly, man. You don't see you can only delegate so much energy.
Yep.
So what I love to say is removing hats. Like take that hat off and give it to a professional. Delegate. Take the hat off, delegate, exactly. And that's what a lot of people really need capital for. Their business is fine, but now they need marketing and things like that. So you have to learn how to ask for that without, it just being for marketing, right?
Yeah.
It's, how else is it going to benefit if it benefits your business in more areas, that opens up the options, the capital that you can get so you can get those things.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we've talked about this before on some of our other podcasts, but business owners burn themselves out.
100%.
It's like the biggest thing it's the reason I forget the statistic. I think within 10 years, 90% of small businesses go out of business, and it's, lack of information, lack of capital, and the fact that they do everything, they burn themselves out, and they don't learn how to delegate their tasks, right? And it was interesting. We were part of some coaching programs, and one of the things that stuck with me, one lesson was, they made us, hey, write out what your $500 an hour tasks are. And then write out what your $10 an hour tasks are.
Great task to do.
And he's like, these $10, $15 an hour, that goes to a person that, that needs to do that. These are where you bring in the most value, right? So,
exactly.
Do you work with so you have a partner, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so do you guys have any employees in your company, or is it just you two?
Yeah, we do. We have agents. We have 3 agents.
So how do you give us a little insight on how your relationships are with the people that you work with and how you manage that?
Well, because I have the luxury of being small right now and being in the field that I'm in, I only do business with people I know, like, and trust. Perfect. And now I'm starting to say know, love, and trust, right?
Yeah.
I give a lot of people grace, but you also have to protect yourself. Do you have the proper legal documents in place? Do you have operation agreements? Do those people know what they're doing? In the military, we have SOPs. And in the infantry, you learn 2 jobs above you. Because if that person gets knocked down, you need to fill that role. And there is no time to react.
Yeah, it's action. Immediate. Yep.
Exactly. And it takes a certain mindset, but anybody can learn it through discipline. Mm-hmm. Discipline will trump skill every day, right?
Yeah.
Consistency, 100%. Right? So you don't have to get it all right the first time. You just have to be consistent. So I live off, you saw my Google Calendar. It's color-coded and such. Yeah. I have to do that. Yeah, exactly. I have to do that to know what are my $500 tasks are and what are my $12 tasks are. And what's my delegating to my CRM? Who's making this call? Do I really need to be there in person? Can I put this off? Can I shuffle things around? Now, for me to be able to do that, I have to know as early as possible what my week looks like. And it works for me if I usually look at 3 days to 4 days beforehand and realistically schedule out what that next 4 days is going to look like. And that way I know where I can add people. Mm-hmm. There's CRMs, there's programs that can do that stuff for you. But I'm a very audible and visual learner. Like, I listen to Audible books. I like to take notes even if I'm going to type it up anyway. Because when I write it, I know I'm retaining that information, right? Yeah. So a lot of times I'll have like a mind map and I'll write stuff out, or I'll have several calendars, even in my car, where I'm making notes, and they're for specific things. Like, some things might be for my friends, some things might be for events, some things are catered to this part of my business, something's catered to my nonprofit, and then something's catered to my other business, which doesn't take as much time, Yeah. So it's just, you got to manage that. Then people use family and friends. Those are all excuses and we know exactly what those are like.
Yep.
So you can make time. It's what is your valuable time. You have to dictate what your value in time is, right?
100%. Now, this next question, and again, I'm just thinking of stuff listening to. One, you're awesome, dude. Everything you're doing is phenomenal.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. And this next question might go beyond my imagination with how many answers there are. But What are some, so you served in the infantry, and I did something that isn't a comparison at all, but I gave 2 years of my life to go serve a mission. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because, when you go serve in the infantry, and for me, when I served in a mission, I know there's certain things that we learned that have helped us become successful in our fields that a lot of people don't, if they don't go serve a mission or they don't go to the Army, they're not learning those lessons. So what are some lessons that have helped you create what you've created that you may have learned in the Army and were able to transfer over? What are some of those lessons?
A funny thing that we love acronyms just because it makes things a lot easier to memorize. So if you talk to any military person, they know the acronym KISS, and it's Keep It Simple, Stupid. That's it.
I think I've heard that before. Yeah.
So I mean, if you break that down, I'm an analyst personality style by trade. I'm a big thinker. I'm a dreamer. I like to be a creator, but I know how to turn that off and go to action as well, right? And if you have a plan, and then it becomes about the action of executing that plan. Those are things that the military helped teach me. But it wasn't anything different that I didn't learn within sports or personal relationships or, in religion. You know what I mean? There's certain orders of all of us being human. If we just take a look around and become observant, you can get keys and points. And that's the best example I could give you. Yeah. Like, we had a lot of books. We retrained things. So even though we knew them, we still had
review them over and over.
All the time. The best leaders I ever had, I mean, they beat the brakes off of us with information, whether it's physically or mentally, but it was repeated. And it's like you have a basic training, right? Like, you have to learn, all right, what's it like in the military? How are we supposed to line up? How are we supposed to wear our uniform? How is our day set out? Those things were all done for you, but you are responsible for it. And that could be a person that's 26, 25, like when I joined, when all my friends were coming home, or somebody who's 17 who has no life experience. Right? I had already been to 2 colleges before, so it was like, all right, cool. I don't have to make up my day anymore. I know what it's going to be. Show up early. If you're 10 minutes late, or if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. Those are principles that I do my utmost, and having clear communication's another one. That just beat in my head when you say that, RJ. It's you can get away with a lot with saying I'm sorry, right? But you should never start off a conversation with I'm sorry, right? Because that means you weren't responsible for something and now you're sorry for it, right? And that's just my humble opinion. So you're running late, don't think of an excuse. Tell that person you're running late. They'll respect you more.
100%.
Especially you being a contract, that, bro.
Oh yeah.
You imagine bad PGs, like everybody's seen them, Like project managers that can't manage people or are timid or don't have clear communication. Somebody might be asking you something they need help in, and you think you relate it to them in a way that they understand, but you never verify. Like when 100%. We have call signs, the guy on the other side of the radio relays that information back to you. You know, when we pass information going down the tree, that's what we're doing. We're relaying that information like telephone, but you're still relaying it to the original source, so it's the correct information.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's phenomenal. Man, I'm learning so much. This is great. I asked you a little bit earlier, kind of what a day in your shoes is like. I'm kind of curious. So I've read a book, How to Make Your Bed. Have you ever read that book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, so my wife read it. She introduced it to me, and it's like, talking about how you start your day off with a success, and that kind of sets the momentum for the day. What do you do in your life, in your day, to start your day off with success and create that momentum?
Like I mentioned before, I look at what I'm doing. I'll take a quick glance, because everything's digital now for the most part. Take a quick glance before I'm getting ready to get myself to sleep, so I know what the day is. So I'm waking up with anticipation of that going to be a win. Sometimes, we take L's, we have those losses the days before, and it's all on mindset. I'm big into mindset, did a lot of personal development after the military. So it's all on our perception of what that's going to be. If you wake up, if you're going to bed saying tomorrow's going to be a good day, it's that much easier to wake up and make it a good day, right? We create good days, right? And at the end of the day, it's just our viewpoint. You know? Like, Les Brown says, if you're going to fall on your back, because if you look up, you can get up. It's... Some people call me an optimist all the time, but that's not the case. Like, I do a lot of prep work for that day, in the very start of my day for that to be good.
Well, and it comes down to attitude, right?
Yes.
Like your mindset. And I think it's so interesting because the mindset is like, it's hard to control, but it's like at the same time, it's all up to you. That's all it is. Is for you to make a decision. Like you're saying, hey, if I go to bed knowing that I'm going to wake up in a good mood, I'm going to get at it, then I'm ready when I wake up to get at it. I'm in a good mood, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to control your mindset is such a huge part, no matter what business you guys may be running, whether startup or even in your home life. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a homework assignment, and we've talked a lot about how to find the balance between home and life. And I think the number one thing is start off with your attitude. You know what I mean? And being able to have that good mindset that you're going to be able to do what needs to get done. You're going to be able to exceed, and you're going to be happy while doing it. You know what I mean? So that's fantastic. I want to pick your brain about, and this might go back into the Army a little bit, but what is one life lesson? If you could go back 30 years and you could be like, okay, this is a life lesson I want to teach myself before I begin everything. What is a life lesson you would teach yourself after everything you've been through in the Army, building your companies, serving the people? Like what is a lesson?
A life lesson that I would teach myself 30 years ago would be that you need people, but you don't need everyone.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that I'm a very people person, right? Like I love working in groups. I love uplifting teams, but sometimes I hide my leadership skills in doing that. And I lived my life like that until I really had to be a leader or run my own company, work with other companies, put myself out there vulnerably and give education to people, have people trust me. Like those are things I had to learn that were already in me.
Yeah.
So I think it would be encouraging that. Because I doubled down on just getting a bunch of information. And everybody knows this when you're learning. If you're learning something that you like doing, that's the obsession.
Yeah.
And you can get stuck in learning mode and not doing action mode. So I would join groups and depend on other people to do the things that I already could have been doing myself, which probably held me back a little bit. But the universe God gives you what you're ready for. I truly do believe that. And I'm very impatient. I want it now, but
I know how you feel. I'm everybody knows I'm very impulsive, so it's just like I don't want to wait. I just want to go. I'm going to shoot for the stars and see what happens. Right. You know what I mean?
I always said I jump in with 2 feet.
yeah, seriously. And it works for some people. For me, like I don't know. Yeah, I know a lot of people that don't recommend like, hey, make sure you think about it and you take your time. And for me, it's just like, I want it. I'm going to go get it. And if I fail, it's just going to be turned a life lesson. Yeah. And you mentioned about like falling on your back and not your stomach. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like if you can have that mindset that you are going to know you're going to fail and expect it, but you're going to get back up again, everybody could do everything in the world.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If with persistency and consistency, they would accomplish everything. But no, that's an amazing life lesson. I think when I look around in the world, I see a lot of people that are codependent. And people, I'm writing a book right now called, and I'm going to name it The Power Change, because I feel like a lot of people are held back, kind of like what you're talking about. They're waiting for someone else to do something so they can do something, or they're waiting for something to transpire in their lives so they can take the action needed. And all that does is kill dreams and hold people back from their true potential.
100%.
You know what I mean? And it's so true. Don't wait on everybody else. But I also agree with, God puts people in our paths for a reason. You know what I mean? I've had so many wow moments to where like I've done something, I wasn't sure about it, and then it led me here. I'm like, wow, that's why I needed to do that. And even out of failures, you know what I mean? Like
you learn the most from failing.
What's your biggest failure? I'm curious.
My biggest.
If you don't mind sharing.
I've got nothing to hide. I would say my biggest failure wasn't not asking for help at a young age, but not encouraging myself that I could do it. I always knew I could do it, but I would wait, procrastinate until I had to do something or the world was burning for me to get it done. And that held me back and gave me a lot of other issues, of like codependency, like you were talking about. And we're taught, like, in our world in Western society that failing is bad, failing is wrong. No, that's completely false. Fail faster, fail more.
As much as
fail
you can.
early. Yeah, like as you get later, we all fail at things, but how we perceive that, like you said, that mindset of being able to, okay, well, that's the way not to do it. Like everybody goes back to Edison, but Tesla was a way better inventor. And how many times do you think he had to do things to come up with his inventions, right? For people still not to remember, that's why we have alternating current and things like that. You know what I mean? So it's doing it for yourself, not holding yourself back, and not just asking for help, but doing the action that's going to help you, right?
So I know for a fact that we also have moments where we have that voice in our heads like, hey man, can I do this? Am I able to do this? Am I enough? You know what I mean? Especially in growing a business, like people think, these the most successful people you can think of in the world, that they don't face these emotions. They 100% do. Every single time. I think about Grant Cardone. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he did a show called The Undercover Billionaire, and it was a very hard challenge. I'm not going to go into it, but here's this guy, huge reputation, made of millions and millions of dollars, and he's crying in shows, and he's facing those emotions. Like, did I do this wrong? Did I sign my death sentence on when I joined this show? Because once I fell, or if I fell, it's gonna ruin my reputation. It's like, it doesn't matter how successful you are. When you're consistently trying to become a better person, doing self-development and building a business as well, you're gonna face those emotions. What do you do to get past those emotions?
If it's something that's overbearing for me, like that's when I get goosebumps from just hearing you talk about it, because that's when I know it's time for action.
Yeah,
that's when I'm ready to go. I mean, I've been programming my mind like this for years. Like I watch my friends go through PTSD, so like a lot of the positives and negatives, that stuff stuck with me while I was in service. So when I was in service, I was reading books. YouTube was just getting as big as a lot bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I woke up to positive messages every day, or went to bed with them, no matter what happened. Yeah. And I did that consistently for 6 years. I still do that, maybe not every day, but I use social media for knowledge, for networking, and for positive reinforcement.
Pick me ups,
Yeah, you know what I mean. And people say, "Oh, you should be able," especially people coming from my background. People are like, you should be able to do that. The stoic thing is so great right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, just block off emotions. That works for you for a time period. That's a tool. You can't use a hammer for a screwdriver, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to have multiple tools and know how to use them. Then you're sculpting, right? Now you're perfecting your mindset. And that's my belief. That's what I work on.
And
I ask for help. Awesome. Like, I have friends that are in public speaking.
Right there. Yeah.
I get coaches. I'm in mentor programs. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars being coached. But some of my best lessons have been with big stars, because nobody else raised their hand.
Yeah.
I went to a book signing with Damon John, and he's like, all right, all you have to do is sign up on your phones, and the first 12 people that sign up, I'll come back and listen to your pitches or give you business advice. Bro, four people signed up.
Value. That's
four
it?
people signed up.
Oh,
I got to spend.
God.
He extended his time, and I got to talk to him about what I thought my friends were doing wrong in real estate, what I think we could be doing, what the market's going to do, my idea for different things, and like, to have somebody's time like that, treat people's time with respect.
Oh yeah,
especially the ones that you care about and because those are the ones we don't respect their time.
Right? Well, and it's like you brought up help and being able to ask for help. I think in today's society now, I take pride in being a man. Like, one of my passions, it goes way beyond entrepreneurship. And it's being a protector, provider for the people that I love. Yeah. I'm a dad, and I have a couple girls, and so for me, it's like, it's that's my passion. You know what I mean? And in this day and age, a lot of men put on a face like, hey, like you were talking about, 100%. Numb out, shut your emotions off. I used to do that all the time. Yeah. And I had a couple hardships growing up, and it did really end up numbing me in. Like, I just, I feel like I'm a little bit more hard-hearted because of it. But there's a Bible story, and man, I need to brush up on the Bible a little bit, but I don't know if it was James, John, Peter, one of the apostles steps off on a boat when Christ is walking in the water. Yeah. And, he beckons him, hey, come walk to me. And so he starts walking. He takes, 4 or 5 steps. Everything's good. He looks around, sees all the waves, and then starts drowning. What I find interesting about this story is that when it talks about it, it didn't say, but as, he was starting, or like right when he knew he was going to start drowning, he asked for help. It was when he was down under. Yeah. When he was down under, then he asked for help. And it's like, how long do we actually wait to ask for help?
Yeah.
Whether it's from mentors, peers, and I'm not talking about codependency, relying on people to do
Sometimes
stuff for you.
just hearing.
But it's actually having the guts to be like, hey, I need help here. Who can I go? And that is another thing that I really feel. I mean, it's held me back before in my life, and I think it holds other people back. Is not understanding that it's okay. It's okay to go to people, go to find people that have done bigger than you, better than you, and go ask what they've done.
Yeah.
Just like you were talking about, like getting that guy's time. Like I can't believe 4 people signed up for it. That's it, dude.
Yeah.
Like I would have been all over that. Like how valuable is that time? Like. Anyways, that's an amazing, story.
It's like you said. It's when are we asking for that help?
Yeah.
Putting on that face, being that male, being that masculine. There's nothing wrong with that, but the Bible also says in Ecclesiastes, I believe that is order, it says time. What is it? No, I would forget it. It's basically going over talking about there's a time and place for everything, right? So like. Sometimes men, like if you go back to prehistoric things, I get this from this book called Understanding Women. Any of my fellows out there, if you want to understand yourself and communicating with a woman, it's the best book I've ever read.
I think we all do.
100%. My ex-girlfriend gave it to me. It was eye-opening, bro. But long story short, it goes into talking about how we became herd animals and why we communicate the way that we do.
Interesting.
We're pack animals. Women are not. That's why men ask for loyalty. And she breaks this down better and can do a better explanation of this. But women switch up friends like that, right?
Yeah,
They do have, like the long distance. Not saying that they can't, but the majority that they've tested, we operate in different things. If you look at the book, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, things like that. Yeah. Like there's differences between us and our mentalities. And being able to ask for help, sometimes you need that working person, that working brother, that spiritual leader, that mentor that can understand you and what you're really asking, because sometimes we don't know what we're asking for, right? We sound like we're waving the flag, but it might not be coming out the right way.
Exactly.
And so you might need somebody who understands you. Or the bias of people understanding, you need somebody completely different to hear you out and give you an outside opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you learn that stuff by growing and gain experience yourself, in my opinion, right? You gotta learn, like, hey, if I'm feeling down in multiple, like, what am I gonna do? All right, what's my plan to fix this? The fastest thing to change your feelings is doing something physical, right? The hardest thing for me personally to do is just to put on blinders, turn off my honest mind, and start meditating. It's not going to work for me. I have to beat myself down. I've been pre-programmed to do that over the years, to wear myself down so I can calm my brain down. And then I can, refocus on where I'm at. And then I can start listening to things, that are going to support me, people who are going to support me. One of my best friends, he's the biggest a-hole like you'll ever meet. But he always tells me directly, things that I don't want to hear, but I need to hear.
Love those guys.
You need to have those guys. Yeah.
And Mikey's one of those guys for me.
Yeah, awesome. I can see that. No, I'm just kidding.
So, my next question is, you mentioned you're a man of faith, right? And, about the Bible we've talked about a little bit. So how has faith affected when you served in the Army, as well as you've built your businesses and become who you are today?
That's a very good question. I'm not the norm, I would say. The religion I was brought up in didn't acknowledge a lot of government and definitely not war. But I knew, like, I'm a third generation military kid, It was something of a duty that I knew I would be good at. I knew what I was going to do in there, and it was always a chapter, not the book. So me and God have a funny relationship at times. I still hold a lot of resentment towards God, because I've seen I get a lot of worthiness stuff from losing so many amazing people. Like I talked before we were on, like my best friend died 6 months after I got home, and I was working with him to learn medical sales. So I didn't really get to deal with my PTSD till after that. And I stayed with his 2-year-old son and his girlfriend for about 2.5 more years in an area that I didn't really know, a lot of people I didn't know, but it helped me grow as a person. Like, God gave me that, I like to say every blessing comes from God in the universe. And the only like real devil is the the wolf within ourselves, right? Like even the Bible and many different other religions. You have a lot of Arabic friends, Jewish friends as well, Buddhist. In every text, you go back and it says God made us in His image, right? So without the manipulation of different interpretations of religion, and this is all my own opinion, I think that God gave us everything that we need, but we also get a lot from the universe as well, right? Like we have to understand who we are to really get that power from ourselves. Like your brain is so powerful. And I can literally say this working with working with neurosurgeons and watching the things they do. I watched one of the tools I used to sell was a ferromagnetic wand, so it could heat it up like using magnets and wand, right? And they would use this as a resection tool. So you would do this to dig out bad or dead skin and things like that. Well, neurosurgeons would use it on brain, removing tumors, cancers. And I say that to say this. I've seen people freak out and have a bad time after getting that small cancer removed that might be as big as a thumbnail and have problems and things like that. But I can't say for sure, but a lot of it I think was self-imposed. Like because I'm in the hospital, all these things are going to be bad afterwards. I'm never going to be the same. Adds up to that. What we believe is true, right? Yeah. So we have to believe that we're all here for a purpose. And that God of the universe or whatever you believe in, that is there to support you, right? And if you're acting at your best and wanting the most from other people, the more support you're going to feel. Whenever I feel real bad and real down and I don't feel like I can break through, one of my action things is to go donate my time. And it doesn't matter to be what. It could be a 5K, it'd be helping out, set up stuff with a lot of my friends taught soccer for kids and things like that. That helped me through so many bad times, reading the scripture, not reading the scripture, reading conflicting things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I could get a more well-rounded viewpoint so I could solidify what do I feel is right.
Yep.
Where am I acting at my best? Where am I getting my most successful repeatable things, not on a whim, right?
Yeah. I love that you're saying that. In whether you read self-development books, business entrepreneur books, or the Bible, the scriptures, we all know that, and some people consider it like good karma, for example, right? Yeah. So like whatever you put out there, you're going to get back. 100%. And when I left on my mission, I was in 2 years of service of other people, like 100%. Consistently helping other people, whether it had to do with the religion or it was service cleaning out some old lady's gutters. Like I was the most happy I think I've ever been in my life because I wasn't focused on me. You know what I mean? And I think that is a very important lesson to be learned, whether it's in your home life, in your business life, that the more you can go out and give, the better. More, whether you have a lot or a little, 100%. you're gonna be happy, which is gonna lead you to even more success. I remember 100%. When I first came back from South America, I had met my wife. We had gotten married. I was bringing home like $800, $1,000 a week doing landscaping services. Awesome, I was actually supposed to go to a business college out in Utah with some friends, and I had this feeling, this impression that I needed to go home and help my family. I came back. Found out my mom was just horribly addicted to drugs. I had to put her through, rehab and all these things, and it ultimately led me to my wife as well. And I've been very grateful for that.
And you don't see that at the time.
Exactly.
You're just like, the house is on fire and I need more buckets.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's weird how it works out because I'm like, my whole plan's gone up in flames. Like what? Like I don't know what I'm gonna do now, but I need to go do this. And now I couldn't imagine my life without having done that. Right. Yeah. And but I think one of the biggest things is that, I look back then when I was going through all that, and I felt like my life was in more of a chaos back then. Rather now, I'm more established. I have a family. I know who I am. I have my head on my shoulders. I've built a business. I have more money now than I did back then. But a few months back, and I don't know how many to be specific, but earlier this year, I was just feeling crappy, and I'm like, why do I feel so unhappy right now? Like, I'm where I want to be. I'm not completely, but I'm further along that path. I have the things that I want. Why am I more unhappy now than I was back then? And the key to that is helping other people and servicing other people. And all these business books that I read, because I'm a really big nerd on just kind of business development and stuff like that. And they always talk about like,
which
go help
off.
people. Thank you. It's go help people. The more like, don't do stuff and expect something in return. Just do it out of love. And the world, the way the universe, the way God works is that it all comes back. And I think that is just that would be for me, and a lesson I can go back and teach myself is like, dude, just focus on other people.
Yeah.
Don't focus all on yourself. Focus on other people, and everything will come into place. And that's just phenomenal. So
yeah, I mean, it's I really believe in a win-win mentality, right? Or a win-win equals a win.
Yeah.
So like with that, you also have to remember there is a good focus on yourself too. But you had that intuition, like I know I need to be there for my family. I did the same thing back when I was in North Carolina. Like I thought that was where my life was going to be after the military. I had no idea I was going to get into real estate. I got to be this person the last 10 years because of that decision to come back home and thinking and having that knowing that I needed to be there. I wasn't sure yet. But it's like you said, like God, the universe, everything puts us where we needed to be, and if we put action on that.
Yeah, 100%.
There's nowhere in the Bible where God gave you something for free.
Yeah,
like, you all had to do something, or there was a contingency towards it, right? There was an action. There was just something, right? It's just funny how the world works like that. The Japanese have different sayings for talking about knowing your Ike, like knowing your purpose, knowing what you wake up for and what you're going to sleep for and what it is in family and health and a better society. Like we have all these things that are regurgitated, like the Quran has different things like that of helping out your brothers and sisters. So like if you go and look at these different texts, it all talks about taking action, right? And lending a hand. If you look at, like I just use a reference, you look at the Bible, Jesus, you talk about Mary, you know what I mean? Like you talk about the women that he associated and the men that he associated. Like Paul's name was Saul before. He was a murderer. Yeah. He killed Christians before he became a Christian. You know what I mean? So there was forgiveness after that. Yeah. Like if you believe in Jesus, there was change, right? Yeah. It was shown. Like every spiritual leader has that. And you can pull that out of yourself where you might not know that you've been like that for other people, but you won't know unless you ask, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like what's wrong with asking like, hey, we had a lot, if there's anything that you really need, it's always good to hear that, right?
Yeah,
and that
100%.
takes a big person to say that.
Yeah.
But when do we go and say, hey, when I'm messing up, can you make sure that you call me on this?
Yeah.
Or I'm worried about this, or I'm working on this plan. Can you help support me in that?
Dude, that's phenomenal. I think that's like, I had to have a meeting with our team, or I brought it up a few times because it's like, as a leader or as someone who's, in a position of leadership, you're constantly trying to help other people get better. And a lot of times that leader gets left out. Right?
All the time. Yeah,
people are like, oh, I don't want to go tell my boss, dude, you suck at this. Like people get afraid. And it's also hard to realize how to open up that doorway to allow people to do that. But, sometimes people get lost in that and they're not able to receive that criticism, which is healthy, right?
Yeah.
And anyways, that I was just thinking about that because like I just a little while ago, I was like, man, I know I'm messing up at stuff, but nobody's telling me what I'm messing up on. Either that or I may not be listening.
So many times, bro. And that's because you're in your head and you're not asking for it. You're not clear.
You're not being, yes. Yeah.
So how can somebody else be clear, right?
Exactly.
Like it's so easy to see on the outside in, but when we're going through it, you're in that emotion. You're worried about it.
You're locked in,
I would always ask for things that I didn't need when really I should have been asking. I shouldn't shit myself, but really it was, I needed to be asking something else. I was too afraid to ask that.
Yeah.
So I had really good mentors and good people around me with more experience than me that I could open up and be vulnerable to, that I didn't care how I was coming off.
Yeah.
It was like they accept me a certain way. I can get that real judgment and help.
Yeah.
And the Army really helped me callous up like that. Like my sergeant, like my call sign was Taliban. Like my last name's Turner. Like you want to go walk into a chow hall or where you go and eat your lunch, dinner, and breakfast in a foreign country with your peers and superiors fighting the Taliban, and somebody yells out, "Where's Taliban at?" Right? Like there's a lot of tough skin I had to get. You know what I mean? I've been called everything in the book, right? And that was just for that job. And that made that, I say that to say that it doesn't matter how it comes out, it's the delivery.
Yes.
Are you getting the message across? Are you communicating your needs and what you want?
You've mentioned that a couple times about being specific. It's really interesting, and I'll go back into some of the faith part a little bit. It's like I've had in our church and stuff, we give talks, like the congregation people get called once a week to give talks in church, and something I've talked on a few times is specific prayer, and I think that goes even further into our lives. Like if you guys are not specific, or if we are not specific in what we're asking for, we're not communicating, you're not going to get the right outcome. And I've noticed, like, when I pray, if I'm asking, like, hey, I hope that I can have good health, or everybody can have good health, or when I'm more specific, my answers are more specific, right? So if you're more specific on what you asked, you're going to expect a more specific response backwards. Rather, if you're vague, you can expect a vague response. You know what I mean?
100%. And that's all you get.
Yeah.
And that's why, like some of my mentors would force me to get out of that, really all
that blockage.
Yeah, the blockage and confusion. Yeah. Really, that unclarity is a way for your mind to hide. It's a defensive mechanism.
Yes.
Right? Really, we know what we want. We feel what we want, even if we can't express it. Like our body or soul, everything knows what we want.
Yep.
And as soon as we're clear on that, how easy does the world just part its ways out of your way for it?
Yeah.
Like it could scare you. Like I've had blessings where I sat back and I was like, I'm not ready for that. And thank God I had good people who saw more of me. They're like, no, go do that.
Yeah.
Go do that. This is why you need to do that. Who are you letting down by not showing up?
Exactly.
As yourself. Like it's something I work on. I pray about. I do a lot of mental gymnastics with coaches because I have a pretend worthiness complex through and through. And I can guess some ways where it comes back. Reiterates it. I let it into my life, but I don't let it control me.
Right.
And I think that happens to anybody that's having some sort of success, right?
Yeah.
Because you work so hard to get there, but you gotta realize it's part of the journey. Yeah. It's like that. You guys know, when you're building a commercial building or a house, like you gotta have a foundation before you start framing.
Exactly.
And you can't throw a wall, drywall.
Hey, I've seen it done without a foundation. It doesn't turn out very well.
Yeah. You will not have the same successes, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I have a really close personal friend, and I call him a mentor too, that he always says, and he gets this from his mentor, your roots produce your fruits. So what you're
that's good
putting in, what you're consistently locking down on, what you're being clear about, what you're moving towards.
Yeah.
That's where we get those juicy fruits. And fruit doesn't come overnight.
Yep.
It takes time to mature. Even after it's plucked, sometimes it still needs to mature, right?
Yeah.
That's what we are. We're constantly maturing. And that means that our wants and needs and beliefs change as we grow, If not, you're not growing.
Yeah.
And I truly believe you're in growth or decay. There is no standstill.
And kind of, this will be the last thing I touch on, but like kind of on another part of that, like when we ask for criticism, or when you guys as business owners ask for criticism, you want to make sure you can take in what you can handle and actually implement. So one, he talked about letting your guard down, being able to accept it, have tough skin, and realize, okay, hey, you may not be good at this, but that's the only way you're going to know to get better. But at the same time, and I'm talking out of experience at this moment, because we've been doing a lot of coaching programs, a lot of self-development programs and stuff like that, and I've invested more in ourselves than anything else at this point this year.
Great teams.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all this information from this guy. I'm like, okay, I have too much information, and I need to slow down, and I need to start implementing and actually intaking it rather than just, because we can all go get a ton of information 100%. Online. You can pull books, you can do this, go to as much school as you want, but if you're not retaining and actually applying and taking action, it's not going to get you anywhere. You can have all the information in the world. You can know exactly how to be a billionaire, but if you don't put it to use, you're never going to be a billionaire, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's really important to also know that for me, when I started getting into self-development, I was going all out. I was getting all these books, reading things, like 2 books at a time, and then I realized, okay, well,
I'm guilty.
I got to slow down and I actually need to apply this stuff. So make sure you guys realize that as you're growing in your self-life, your personal life and your business life, that information is good, but don't overload it, because then you're not going to implement it, and then it does you no good whatsoever, right? And like you were saying, so when I moved into, I have a rental property that I just moved into, and they have fruit trees, and I was like, awesome. Oh, dude, awesome! I have a bunch of fruit. Well, the first time the fruit grew, they were small, and I mean, from peaches, all this kind of stuff. Like, I didn't get any good fruit because there was so much on there.
Yeah.
So then I learned, okay, I got to prune a little bit. I got to shake the tree, get all of them down. So the ones that do stay there, they grow big, they grow juicy, and I'm like,
Nutrients.
those are the ones I want, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so that, I just put two and two together. They're like, okay, hey, yes, we need to slow down a little bit. We need to be able to take what we can handle, implement it, then move on to the next piece.
Yeah, and sometimes it's after implementation, you have to redo the process. From the start. When I was in that mode of just information dumping, like, and gaining, like that's all I was doing because that's all I knew at that moment, right?
Right.
And I was too scared to really take massive action. I take a little bit of action. That's why my first business is called Massive Purpose, because I went to a speaking gig in LA, and another guy who was getting a movie made about him and his whole personal journey. Like, it was such a crazy experience. We stayed up talking in opposite rooms, and he's like, bro, that's what you do though. You're taking massive action. That's your real purpose. I was like, yeah, I want to have like my name for my company be personal. He's like, that's what it is. It's massive purpose. It's so funny. And I lived that. And he was the one that told me, all right, it's cool. You've read 100 and something books. How many of them can you quote? How many of them do you know? How many have you reread? Like, what's more important is how well you know the information, right?
Yeah. 100%.
So reread a book. Take a year to reread a book instead of reading all these books again, you know?
Yeah.
New stuff comes out with the information. My dad always used to say there's nothing new under the sun. It's just shown differently.
Yeah. You know, and it's kind of funny because as I started reading all these books, I've told my team, I'm like, guys, these are universal laws. Like, the laws to success in personal and work life, they're universal. They've been used for hundreds of thousands of years, whatever you want to call it, and they're the same. They've just been implemented a little differently. They may have been adapted a little bit differently to society, technology, whatever the case is, but they're the same. They're the same. There's nothing new under the sun. It's the perfect way to put it. So, fantastic. Well, JT, it's been, dude, an honor to have you here. It's been great. I've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate that. And, you know, I hope if there's anything we can do to help you, we want to be there as well. Guys, if you go on to the links below, you're going to find information for JT, his businesses, what he does. I'm sure many of you out there have already heard, like, hey, you already know you want to contact him and get some advice from him and work with him. I know we do. So you'll be able to find everything links below. Also, our links to our elder contracting page, the HWA website, and where our information is. And, you know, this is all about giving back, guys. Like, we've been through stuff, and we haven't been through everything, right? We're still learning from people, but our experiences are what we want to share so that we can help you guys that are going through the same thing. And at the same time, you guys are helping us, right? We're all learning together. So this is the journey of life. This is the Homework Assignment Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
Woo. Subscribe, like.
Subscribe and like, yes. And review.
Yeah.